And in the on with us is House Education Chairman Rob Roberson. I think we're connected. There we go. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. What a beautiful morning we've got today.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw something where Brookhaven, was it Brookhaven? Just in the month of July, they were setting the record with rain every single day for like 12 days in a row. And I always say in July, if you can get a rain 1 or 2 days out of the month, you're doing pretty good. So hopefully that trend will continue. But I do see that we're in for a hot period for the next several days. We'll see what happens. I did not ask you to come on to talk weather, but I did ask you to come on to talk education. I don't even think I've had you on since the end of the session. Your insight and analysis on how we did as the chair of House Education.
I have a tendency to be a little tough on myself. I think we can always do better. The reality is that if you're not always striving to push forward, do better, and not be afraid to make some mistakes, because we're going to make some mistakes. But I think all in all, I think we did a good job. But the reality is that the day I think that we've done the best we can do is the time for me to go home.
The buzz is that we're going to work on this, and hopefully we'll have some modicum of school choice. I think everybody's pointing to that. Louisiana passed a bill that would allow all students to qualify for educational savings account, and ESA is a taxpayer-funded account that can be used for educational expenses as directed by a student's parents. Arkansas passed a LEARNS Act, a comprehensive and transformative education plan to empower parents with more educational options while also strengthening public schools. Have you guys, Mr. Chairman, taken a look at that one? In Arkansas,
we're probably going to be looking at that. We're probably going to take all the above approach and continue looking at whatever's out there. The reality is that whatever we do, Mississippi is situated a little bit different than a lot of states. Arkansas may be Arkansas and Louisiana probably are the closest in terms of the size and the people that we have in terms of money and those kinds of things. So we'll probably be looking at a lot of that. My biggest concern is to make certain that we really are protecting the kids in the hurting districts, the districts that have the D and F. We're going to have to do something to make certain that we're pulling them up. I have no desire to take the rest of our districts and pull them down to where they're at. I'm going to be pushing forward to pulling up the districts that we have. Now, what that looks like, I don't know. We're going to have to continue meeting with superintendents. We're going to have to keep meeting with teachers. And frankly, we're going to have to keep meeting with parents to find out what exactly it is they want and what it is that they don't want.
Well, let's talk about how could in the poorest of poor districts, specifically in the Mississippi Delta, how could school choice be detrimental to them?
Well, the problem you've got is where are they going to go?
Hold on, and can you go back? Well, if they can't go anywhere, they have to stay there. So it's the status quo.
That's not good enough.
Somebody wants to come in. Well, then you put something. Then whatever's not good enough should have already been done.
Well, we're going to get there. It's just a matter of moving forward. The reality is that we do have some things in the works. I'm not ready to come out completely with what we're doing, but I'd like to try to pull together what I'm kind of calling super schools, where we can bring in more kids to that particular school district. And we're going to have to look at some consolidation. The reality is that a lot of the schools that we're talking about, they have too few children in those school districts to support the system that they have. So it's going to be a all approach in terms of how we're going to look at this and move forward. But the reality is that the districts that are not pulling their weight for these kids and for these parents and for our teachers and superintendents, period, we're going to have to do better.
Where do you get most of your pushback as chairman of House Education? Is from the lobbyist, from the go ahead.
Generally speaking, I mean, a lot of your pushback in that arena sometimes it comes from educators, sometimes it comes from parents. Sometimes it comes from lobbyists. I mean, the truth is, it kind of comes from everywhere at some point, depending on what the issue is. Now, that being said, there are a lot of good ideas out there, and there could be one detractor or one thing that makes that not work. And sometimes that one thing that makes it not work grows to be something that you can't really manage. And you know how this is. You've been around politics a long time. Perception is reality for a lot of people. And of course, the bad old Republicans, we didn't care about education for years is what was said. And that could be nothing further from the truth. I mean, I've got 4 children that I want our education system to not just be good. I want it to be great.
For people who don't know how hard this is, and listen, I do, Mr. Chairman, if you just took one of those legal-sized pieces of pads, and you better have a couple of ink pens, and start listing on people who have a connectivity to, $2.5 billion from a multitude in the local community all the way up to the state. There are a lot of people who feed on that $2.5 billion. Actually, with federal dollars, it's more than that. But there are a lot of people at the table. They don't want changes. Now, I got to believe that's the same thing in Arkansas and Louisiana, but they've done it.
Well, they don't have a perfect system either, though. I mean, the reality is that we're going to be moving ourselves forward toward that direction. But the days of your school system being an employment opportunity for and the biggest employer of your county, that's the only perception as to why we're keeping that school open, those days are over. We're not going to be continuing that mindset. And the truth is, if the school district was putting out Rhodes Scholars, I wouldn't be sitting up here having this conversation with you about it. The reality is they're not. We're not doing what needs to be done for these kids as they move forward and be able to tackle the rest of their life. And that's not fair to them. And frankly, it's shooting the community in the foot by making that assertion that that's all they can do.
One of the saddest conversations I think I've ever had was with a retired mayor who had been mayor for a long time in one of these small towns. He says, talking to Rhodes Scholar, every time you get a kid who gets a great education, they're not coming back to this town. And he said, we lose a resident. And I said, also, you lose a voter. And he just kind of smiled. But it's one of those devils in the details. If you're going to give that kid a good education, probably you're not going to keep him in that small town. But your job is to give that kid a good education, period.
Absolutely. And the worst part about this is if we would go in here and be the place that was known to have the best education in the nation, guess what would happen? We would blow up. This state could not keep we'd have to put guards at the border to check folks as they came through because we would be overflowing. The reality is we've got to make our educational system the best it can be. Frankly, I think we're well on our way. It's going to take time. And you're right. This is very frustrating. You can get in the middle of this and there are assumptions made by people as you move forward with this, that there are always these agendas that, frankly, that's not what I'm dealing with. My issue, and I know that the speaker and I think the governor's issues are, let's make our education system the best they can be, and the governor for that matter. So I think that there's we've got to push back on some of the analysis of, Mississippi's never going to have a great educational system. That's baloney. We are.
Douglas Carswell from Public Policy was on with me recently, and he basically said some of the numbers that we're spouting out there as far as advancements are not as good as we say they are. I don't know if you've heard that, but your response to that.
I think he's probably correct. I'm not going to sit here and mix words. The reality is that I think that we've done well, and I think we're pointed in the right direction. But some of the numbers that I've actually seen, I've suspected that they've been tainted by either COVID or tainted by the fact that the rest of the nation probably haven't done as well in some of their testing as they should have done. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean to take away from the positive things that we've been able to accomplish, but the reality is that I think that it does no one any good to pretend that we're doing so much better than we really are. I would rather look at these things and make certain that we're tackling them head on.
Back with more coming up next. Fair. You going to make it this year?
I'm going to try. We being in God's country, it's hard to leave. So sometimes we have to hang around and get work done.
I'm sitting here looking at the long list. We used to have, I think it was, I forgot how many it was. Was it 140 or something like that, school districts in the old
I think it's 144.
144.
I think that's close.
Down.
We at minimum it needs to be 82. At some point here, we've got to look at these things and make certain that we are consolidating. And to be honest with you, I don't have a problem going under 82. And I know there's been a lot of push on administrative costs, and of course that would help, but that wouldn't be that's not necessarily my overall thinking in terms of that. It's to make certain that we're getting the resources down to these kids the best we can. But having that many school districts, that you talk about pushback. The reality is when we talk and start pushing forward to get some of that reduced, you're going to see a tremendous amount of fallout with that. But I'll be very honest with you, we're going to do it. That's the reality of where we are right now, and we've got to push forward with it.
In many counties like Yazoo County, you have the Yazoo City, the municipal school district, and the county school district. We're not talking about closing the schools in some of these cases. We're just talking about the school district office itself. Am I right?
Yes and no. If there are areas of the state that we've got dilapidated buildings, we need to consolidate and close those buildings down, move these kids into a place where they can have a better educational system, period. But I think your thinking is correct. We're looking at the administrative side first.
Well, Robin, and this has been like this for a long, long time. In these small communities, when the mayor gets in, the board of aldermen or the council or whatever, that is the key. That's the nerve center. It's either the schools and or the hospitals. That's where most of the employment is, and they want taxpayers to keep funding that to keep that alive. So there's a juxtaposition in there, and if they close, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. But again, we're not educating these kids.
And that's the purpose. I mean, the reality that we've got to face is, why do we open schools to start with? They weren't to be an economic development tool. It's to make certain that we're putting forth an effort to make sure that the next generation can help support themselves. And the whether it be politicians or whether it be community leaders from those areas, I appreciate where they're coming from. I don't want to limit the amount of understanding they think, we don't get it. We get it. But if education was so important in your community, you'd make it the best. And that's not what's occurring. What we've got is a system sometimes in certain areas. Now, we've got some outstanding superintendents out there. We've got some outstanding teachers out there that are doing a heck of a job. But the bottom line is that this is not meant necessarily to be a job creator. It's meant to be an education system for our children. And if we do our job right, as far as the politicians at the state level, the teachers and superintendents at the local level, then all of the other things will fall into place. You'll have an area that has the smartest, best people.
And we're running out of time here. Wish we had more time. But I do want to ask you this: is a bill going to come from your committee?
We're probably going to have one from. There will be a bill from the House and the Senate. Would be my bet. There will be something from the House. There will be something from the Senate. This year, hot topics. There's several hot topics. You've got cell phone issues that are popping. You've got. I've heard all kind of technology issues. AI has become a huge thing. So we're going to have several bills from several different directions.
Oh, you're going to keep busy this session, I guarantee you. Let's talk about the telephone, Roy, because you're not. Here's what gets me, Mr. Chairman. When somebody says, can they bring a telephone or a phone? They're not just bringing a phone. When you've lost your phone, you've lost more than a phone. They're bringing a telephone, a TV camera, a photo, a regular photo camera, a collection of photos, texting apparatuses, movie editing machines, a library of references, compasses, maps, tape measures, on and on and on. All of these things are brought in the classroom. Are you up to or in favor of maybe saying, look, before you come in that classroom, you leave your cell phone in your locker?
I'm a very big proponent of local rule generally. As a Republican, I think that's where we get the best dynamics. Now, 77% of all educational.
I hardly ever do this, but we've run out of time. Can you hang on for a second? The clock, it's District 43. We were talking about this, and time passed so fast. I wanted to get to this, though, because I think it's important, and the Lieutenant Governor is going to certainly push it in the Senate, in trying to get your feel in the House. Other than, and I think for adults also, Rob Roberson is my guest, Chairman of Education. And Mr. Chairman, even for adults, other than, I'm trying to think of this, even other than a child in a crowded venue, all of a sudden you lose sight of them. And your separation anxiety hits the charts. You never know. You're scared as hell. But, I mean, I have seen that on social media platforms, and I know it myself, but these kids in a classroom, they need to be taught that hey, you're going to be without your cell phone and get used to it. So when you get into real life as an adult or even on weekends, you won't be so attached to that. Now, you said you like to have local rule, but be careful because it's a little bit of, as Paul Harvey used to say, selective indignation. You don't do it with Title IX, you don't do it with the SAVE Act, and I could go on and on and on. So I'll let you have it from there.
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. The on a lot of the things that we're talking about, personal responsibility has to be plugged in here somewhere. Local rule, the whole dynamic with that is you have school districts right now that are making kids leave their phones wherever, whether it be at home or in the locker, or the teachers are picking them up when they walk in. And I am completely okay with that. To be honest with you, I think that's probably the best route to go. But back whenever you and I were in school, this was not an issue. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the access to all of the media and all of the things that are going on right now. And the reality is these kids move forward, they're going to have to learn how to self-regulate. Now, part of that may be taking these phones up when they walk into the classroom, or making them leave them in their cars or whatever, or leave them at home. So I think that the discussion needs to be kind of set up in the situation where we're trying to push some personal responsibility, make certain that these kids understand that whenever I go into a meeting, I'm not going into that meeting with the idea that I can answer that phone in the middle of a meeting if it's important, or if I go to court, I can't answer while I'm in the courtroom. So you're right, but some of this has got to have some personal responsibility activity that's pushing forward a way. Now, the flip side of this is also true. Some of these school districts are using these phones as part of the curriculum. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. However, when it turns into a situation where kids are using that phone to cheat, or using that phone to bully other kids, or they're just checking their text messages every 15 seconds, it's blown into an area of that they obviously don't have the control that we need for them to have, and being able to put that thing up and make certain that that it's being used properly. So to your point, I think you're right.
Well, tell me what school district you will leave it up to the kids and they'll make the right choice. And people will want to send their kids to that school district. I don't think that's going to happen. Secondly, and I'm just guessing that if you made that decision for the teacher and the principal, it would take it off of their back. It's a lot easier for them to say, so she or he in that classroom doesn't constantly have to monitor that. It is a state law, and you've got to do it. Boom, takes it off the table.
Well, I mean, the question now becomes, for them, same question before. You say you want home rule on this, but you don't want home rule on that. So you kind of get into the same circle argument of, what do you want us to legislate, which comes down to sitting down with superintendents and teachers and getting their input on this fact. So I think there is a way to do this. I think our lieutenant governor is well on the right track in terms of what direction we need to go. Look, 77% of schools in the nation are already doing this. So we're going to have to tackle this in a way that it makes some sense. But before we, I guess, put the horse before the cart, I'd like to have some conversations with our superintendents and our educators and let them kind of give us what they're using these phones for, if they are. Some of these places may not be.
Are they using phones, or are they using their laptops, and is there a difference there? I mean, even if they're using their laptops, it's a little bit more control than their personal phones. And these kids can do a lot on their laptops what they're doing with their phones. I understand that. But I just think it does teach a great lesson for further on in life and weekends and everything else, as far as being able to leave that phone behind and not have to have a therapist at the end of school day. But the other part of that is when you talk about cherry picking, if you just said, hey, look, we just thought about this is a good idea, let's go on and do it. I don't think it's to that level. I think it's to the level, it's way up there as something that needs to be done. And nobody just cherries. This is not the first time I've heard about that. I brought it up to the lieutenant governor once more after he did, because I had seen some statistics that kind of surprised me a little bit of how many schools do let them take their phones into class. And I know you say a lot of schools don't, but there's a surprising number of schools that do. They don't want to take that fight on.
A lot of the pushback that your schools are getting, believe it or not, are coming from mamas that want to be able to get a hold of their child immediately.
Yeah.
And it may be hogwash, but you do have that dynamic out there.
Well, Mama, if you've got a problem, there's a front office. There's a lot of people being hired in the front office. Call. They'll pick up the number. They'll run in there and get your kid. Now, if you need to if he's driving and he's got to pick up a quart of milk, that'll be taken care of. That's just crazy. We survived a long time with the old way, and I think it was a lot better. I do want to ask you this, though. Coming up, and I know you guys have do you have some summer meetings coming up, or have you met during the summer? Do you have kind of a plan of action? What are the top 1, 2, or 3 things? And I know school choice is going to be one of them. But as we look forward to the 2025 in January, what do you think some of the issues are that we really need to take that next step?
Mental health is one of the things that we've been dealing with over the summer. There's been several meetings trying to figure out how to move forward with how do we approach that, make certain that the kids that do need some help, we're able to give them resources, give parents resources. AI is huge right now. Which ties into the conversation about phones and those are things that we're discussing as well. So there are a lot of big issues, and I'll be honest with you, if we could make phones disappear, I think all of our lives would be a little better. We seem to get along fine with them before the late 90s, whenever we were really getting into to having phones. But the reality is, moving forward in the future, all of these things are set forth out there in front of us. And I don't want us to close our eyes and pretend like they're not there. I want us to take them on and try to find some solutions. And if bringing the parents and the teachers and everyone together and saying, phones are to stay home, or if we're to get together and say, okay, this is how we're going to deal with AI. This is how we're going to deal with mental health. These are all things that are really important. There's nothing more scary than having a parent call you in the middle of the night and say, hey, my child has an issue and they tried to harm themselves. What are the resources out there? And as a leader in my community, I've gotten that phone call, and sometimes I feel like my hands are tied because it's very hard to know what's available. So hopefully we're going to get to a spot where we're able to give our parents, our teachers, the ability to give these kids the help that they need. It's sad that that's where we are today in this country, where we seem to have somewhat of a desert when it comes to mental health for children, but that's kind of where we are in a lot of places.
House Education Chairman Rob Roberson, you said that AI is a big deal. How do you separate those two? I mean, if it's a big deal, then the phone situation's got to be a big deal too. Because they're
AI,
both of them. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, they're intrinsically linked. Having a world in which you have a something that actually can do the homework for a child, that's mind blowing. I would have never thought that we would reach a point in our culture where this would be one of the issues that we're having to deal with, and it's upon us. This is not something that's science fiction. Yeah. This is stuff that's going on right now. I don't want us to be afraid of the technology, but oh my goodness, on the other side of this is we're going to have people that are completely incompetent if we don't get a handle on this, because a lot of these people, they're going to be using this to cheat, and we don't need that. We need to make certain they understand how important it is not to do that.
Don't be a stranger. I'll call on you many times during the next session. I appreciate it. Love to get you back on before the next session. As far as what to do with AI, I think the first place I would check is just for solutions is AI.